Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For the first, let me introduce myself. My name is Gustri Adella, with student ID 2301816. So today, I'm going to present a topic from Introduction to Sociolinguistic with entitled Deficit, Dominance, Difference, and Identity. This presentation discusses how language is related to gender, power, and identity, especially how women's language has been studied and interpreted in sociolinguistic. So for the first deficit model of women's language, this is the deficit model suggests that woman language is considered weaker than man language. Jadi, pada model defisit beranggapan bahwa bahasa perempuan dianggap lebih lemah dibanding dengan bahasa laki-laki. For the key figure is Robin Lockoff in 1975 with main idea. The first woman tend to use linguistic form that signal uncertainty and lack of authority. The second is woman's speech is viewed as linguistically deficient compared to men's speech. Jadi untuk tokoh dalam model defisit ini adalah Robin Lackoff pada tahun in 1975. So, according by Lackoff, perempuan itu cenderung menggunakan bentuk-bentuk bahasa yang menunjukkan ketidakpastian dan kurangnya otoritas. So, cara berbicara perempuan sering dinilai kurang tegas dan kurang berwibawa. So, the next is feature of deficit model atau ciri-ciri untuk deficit model atau deficit approach. The first is common feature associated with women's language. This is H, like maybe, short of, and kinda. The second is take questions, like it's nice today, isn't it? And then politeness markers, and then rising intonation, and then empathy adjective like cute, lovely, and adorable. For the note, this model have been widely criticized by modern linguists. And then, however, it played an important role in early gender and language studies. Jadi ada beberapa ciri bahasa perempuan menurut deficit model atau approach, antara lain seperti penggunaan hedges, seperti maybe, short of, and kind of. And then there are have the question seperti it's nice today, isn't it? Like this. And then they are have politeness marker atau bentuk kesopanan. Kemudian ada rising intonation atau intonasi naik, serta empty adjective seperti cute atau lovely. But we should take note bahwa model ini telah banyak dikritik oleh ahli linguistik modern karena dianggap terlalu menyederhanakan dan menyudutkan perempuan. Meski demikian, defisit model ini tetap penting karena menjadi dasar awal kajian bahasa, kajian linguistik and gender. So the next is woman's language in modern sociolinguistic. So in modern sociolinguistic, the idea of a single woman's language is rejected. We can have a key idea. The first is gender is something people perform through language, but it is according by Judith Butler's gender performativity theory. And then language use help construct gender identity, and then is no single woman's language. And then language varies based on social class, culture, ethnic culture and ethnicity, age, sexuality, social networks, and communities of practice. So, scholars now believe that gender is something people perform through language, influenced by Judith Butler's theory of gender performativity, and language help people construct their gender identity. And there is no fixed way that all women speak. So the next is sexuality and language change. The sexuality matters in language use. First is lead to lavender linguistic. And then focus on how LGBTQ plus communities use language for the first is identity, and then humor, intimacy, and solidarity. And then for the woman and language change, there have three sections. First is women often lead linguistic innovation. And then William Labov research show women play a key role. And the next is especially in short-chain. So sexuality also plays an important role in language use. This led to the study of lavender linguistics, which focus on how LGBTQ plus communities use language to express identity, humor, intimacy, and solidarity. And then, research by William Labov also show that women often lead language change, especially in phonological or sound change. The next is dominance. So, I will discuss the dominance approach. This approach examines how power relations between men and women are reflected in conversation. The dominance approach examines how power relations between men and women are reflected in their conversational behavior. So, researchers show the women tend to ask more questions, use backhandeling, and encourage others to speak, while men, they are usually interrupt more, control topic, and challenge others. So, in dominance, they are pendekatan ini menekankan bahwa perbedaan bahasa antara men and woman mencerminkan hubungan kekuasaan yang tidak seimbang. Jadi dalam percakapan biasanya woman cenderung memberi lebih banyak bertanya, memberi dukungan, dan jarang memprotes atau menginterupsi. Sementara men lebih sering menginterupsi dan mengontrol topik serta mendominasi dalam percakapan. The next is dominance. Dominance is early researchers by Zimmerman and West Fishman show that men dominate conversations through interruption and topic control. For the critics, first is by other studies by James and Clark, find no consistent gender difference in interruption frequency, but in there, women also interrupt cooperatively. And then, dominance is seen as overly simplistic and not valid across all contexts. And then, not all men are in a position to dominate all women, by Talbot. Jadi, penelitian awal oleh Zimmer and West Fishman menyimpulkan bahwa laki-laki lebih sering mendominasi percakapan. Namun, penelitian selanjutnya mengkritik pandangan ini. Terdapat beberapa studi yang menunjukkan bahwa perempuan juga melakukan interupsi secara kooperatif And then, tidak semua situasi menunjukkan dominasi bagi laki-laki. That is according by author. Like, not all men are in a position to dominate all women. So we can get summarize our key point. The social power relation influence speech, but context strongly shape interaction. Jadi kekuasaan biasanya itu memang berpengaruh, tetapi dalam konteks sosial sangat menentukan bagaimana interaksi tersebut berlangsung. So the next is difference. In difference, men and women belong to different communication cultures or to cultures approach. Jadi dalam pendekatan berikutnya adalah difference approach. In difference approach, pendekatan ini melihat bahwa laki-laki dan perempuan berasal dari budaya komunikasi yang berbeda, sering disebut sebagai pendekatan dua budaya. The first is differences arise from distinct socialization patterns from childhood, and then the second is different conversational goals. First, men seek stature, hierarchy, and solutions. For the woman, seek connection, solidarity, and emotional support. For the example of differences, like the word woman that have a meaning, I'm listening, but for the man, they are used the word tersebut for I agree. And then for the question, women usually give a question for maintain conversation. But for the men, they are give a question because they are request for information. And the next is, in the difference, they are have some critics. For the first is oversimplifies gender differences and lacks strong empirical support by Cameron. The second is avoid addressing power issues and may reinforce stereotypes. And the third is assumes men and women live in a separate subcultures, which is unrealistic. Never perspective or community of practice. Speech style is shaped by the communities people participate in, not gender alone. So the next is gender and sexuality identity. We can get a summarize in the gender and sexuality identity. The key concept is the first, gender and sexuality are socially constructed through language, not fixed traits. So the gender and sexuality identity approach sees the gender and sexuality as social constructed through language, not fixed traits. This is according to scholars like West, Zimmerman, and Butler. Identity is a process, not something people simply have. And then, we do not speak the way we do because of who we are. Instead, we construct who we are through language. The next is the importance points. We are have identity is performed, negotiate, and jointly construct in interaction. The second, gender and sexuality identities are fluid, context-dependent, and intersubjective, or shaped by self and others. And the next is gender identity is intersectional. Example like gender plus class plus ethnicity plus sexuality and plus role. So in identity is perform, negotiate, and construct together with others during interaction. And gender and sexuality identities are fluid, context dependent, and intersectional. This have a meaning. They interaction with class, ethnicity, sexuality, and social role. The next is language, language, power, and multiple gender of social or sexual identities. So, research show that there are multiple masculinities and femininities, not just one. There are multiple masculinities and femininities. Different linguistic style construct hegemonic masculinity, nerd femininity, professional or relational identity. So, speakers shift their language style depending on the situation and audience. Language can both reproduce and challenge social norms, including heteronormativity. In gender and sexuality in this course, first language reproduces and challenges heteronormativity. And then sexual identity, example, lesbian identity, must often be continually performed. And then identity emerge through interaction, not stereotype alone. And then for the current perspective, first is research use both. The first is qualitative identity focused approach, and the second is variationist and discourse-based studies. The last is ongoing debate. Debates are strange of sociolinguistic keep issues of language, gender, and sexuality social relevant. So, for the summarize for our presentation today is comparison of approach by women's language, dominance, difference, and gender and sexuality identity. So to conclude this section, the approach can be compared as follows. The women language approach focuses on linguistic and feature. So in the women language, we can see the approach is features, and then for the focus is for social expectation. For the dominance, the approach is focused on a power inequality. And then for difference, the approach in a culture and equal differences. And for gender and sexuality identity, the approach is focused on agency and dynamic. So, in conclusion, sociolinguistics show that language, gender, and sexuality are deeply connected. Language does not simply reflect identity and power, but actively construct and negotiate them. So, thank you for your attention. That's all for my presentation today. Thank you for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.